Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's State of Community event where we are partnering with our treasured friends out in Lakewood Ranch at the Lakewood Ranch Business Alliance to bring you today a discussion and a conversation about Amendment 2. We've got two very qualified individuals that can speak to us on this topic. The idea and the hope is that we're garnering you with information when you go to the polls or when you mail in your mail-in ballot, that you are making an informed and educated decision on this very important amendment for our state. We want to welcome everyone. Kelly, how are we going? Do we have most of the people in already, or? Okay, great. For the conversation, we will have everyone on mute. If you do have questions, you'll be able to submit those questions through the chat throughout the course of the presentation. And our intent is to have some time at the end that we can address some of those questions. So before we get started, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Morgan with Keiser University, who has been a partner with us in these State of Community events. And I'd like to invite Dr. Morgan to say a few words.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Heather. Good morning. As Heather said, my name is Michelle Morgan, and I'm the president for Keiser University. And I just really want to thank the Chamber for putting on this series, the State of the Community series. I can't think of a better series for us to sponsor, as we are directly tied to this community in so many ways, and everything that we do is a direct impact to our local market and our local community. So thank you for doing that. And particularly a topic like this, this is one that certainly reinforces our need and the importance of voting. It also, though, underscores the importance of understanding the issues. As you know, amendment language can be somewhat challenging at best to understand and might need to be read a few times over, and then we're still not sure we understand what yes means and what a no vote means. And so I appreciate everybody showing up today to make sure that you are informed and you can inform those in your circles about the issues. Keiser University, we've been in this community for 25 years and have degrees all from associate, bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees. We are SACS accredited and certainly look forward to meeting the workforce demands. We are the fastest growing university private university in the state of Florida, and look forward to continuing for 25 more years plus. So again, thank you. It's great to be a partner of the Chamber in this series, and I look forward to hearing from both John and Ben. Thanks, Heather.
Great. We'll go ahead and turn it over to the president of the Lakewood Ranch Business Alliance, Dom Tamayo, to introduce our first presenter of the day.
Sorry about that. I had trouble getting off mute. It's my pleasure to introduce Ben Pollara. Ben is currently the senior advisor to Florida for the Fair Wage. Just a little background on Ben. He's been twice named to the Influence Magazine Influence 100 list for the most influential individuals in Florida politics. Former minority leader of the Florida Senate and former minority leader of the Florida Senate, Oscar Brannan, called Ben a mainstay in the Democratic inner circles, and there are few campaigns or races that he hasn't either touched or influenced in some form or fashion. In 2013, Ben partnered with Orlando attorney John Morgan to run a statewide ballot initiative to legalize medical marijuana in Florida. The effort garnered 58%, but needed the 60% threshold to pass, so it didn't make it in 2013. But in 2016, Morgan and Pollara again put the issue before the voters here in Florida and succeeded with a 71% vote. Most recently, Ben has served as the senior advisor to the campaign for Nikki Fried for Florida Commission of Agriculture and Consumer Services, a statewide elected cabinet level position, and advisor for the ACLU Florida on the successful efforts to pass the 2018 Felons Right Restoration Amendment. Ben currently serves as a senior advisor to Florida for the Fair Wage, the political committee behind the Amendment 2 that we're talking about this morning. Ben is on leave of absence from the Converge GPS for the 2020 campaign cycle. Ben, I turn it over to you for your comments. Thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you, Dom, and thank you all for having me. I'm here to tell you all to vote yes on Amendment 2 if you have not already. I know I got my ballot in the mail a couple days ago. And Amendment 2, Amendment 2 would raise Florida's minimum wage from where it is currently at $8.56 over a period of years to $15 an hour. And I think there are three real reasons why you should vote yes on Amendment 2. Number one, $8.56 an hour is just too low. Number two, it is the right moral thing to do to raise the wages of the lowest paid people in the state. And last, I think it is good for both workers and small businesses. But so first, what does it do? To Dr. Morgan's point earlier about amendments being challenging to understand, this one is not one of those. This one is very simple and easy to understand. Florida's Constitution already had an amendment providing for a minimum wage, and so what we did was essentially changed about 6 words in that existing amendment, deleted about 6 words, and added about a dozen or so. So we deleted. So Florida did not have a minimum wage until the year 2004, when this amendment was added to our Constitution, which set the wage at $6.50 an hour within a small cost of living adjustment every year. So that's what brought it up to $8.56. What our amendment does is deletes that portion that sets it at $6.50 and says that next September 30th, the minimum wage shall raise to $10 per hour from the $8.56 that it is now. And then every year thereafter, raise $1 an hour until it reaches $15 an hour in the year 2026, at which point it reverts to the annual cost of living adjustments on an annual basis. So that's it. It's very simple. It doesn't touch any other parts of the law. It doesn't address anything except for that discrete portion on what the minimum wage is in the state of Florida. So again, why should you vote yes on Amendment 2? Why should we raise the minimum wage? $8.56 is too low. It is not even approaching a minimum wage. Working 50 hours a week at $8.56 before taxes is $1,700 a month. It is just over $20,000 a year. That's barely enough to support an individual, much less a family. It is simply too low. Second, it's just the right thing to do. It is the right moral thing to do to raise the wages of those at the bottom rungs of our economy. And I think the coronavirus epidemic has really kind of crystallized that over the past 6 months. When we think about who the essential workers are, a lot of times we're thinking about the hourly and in many cases minimum wage workers. When we were sheltering in place, I know you all are in Sarasota. I'm in Miami, so it was a little bit different here. But I didn't leave the house really for 2 months. I went to Publix once a week. The people at Publix were there every single day. The baggers and cashiers at Publix making $8, $9, $10 an hour were there every single day. The people who worked at Walgreens were there every single day. The people who worked at Home Depot making $10, $12 an hour were there every single day. And that's not even talking about the people that I didn't interact with, the janitors and the healthcare aides. These are the folks that are making the minimum wage or making close to the minimum wage, and these are the folks whose wages would be raised passing Amendment 2. And lastly, it is ultimately, I think, good for business. First of all, your workers are your customers in many cases, and the more money is in their pocket, the more they can spend it. But number two, and this is the biggest one, happier workers are better workers, and they're workers that stay. There is nothing. I've run a lot of campaigns and run some small businesses. There is nothing worse as a business owner than hiring and firing people. Those are the two worst things in any business. And so when you can retain employees, that is, it makes everybody's lives easier. And when you pay them a decent wage, they do better work. And when they work for you longer, they do better work. So I think it is ultimately good for business too. And this is, we designed this, lastly, I would say that we designed this to be a gradual phased in proposal over a period of years that will have a gigantic impact on people's lives, but will not have a gigantic impact on the bottom lines of the state of Florida or the businesses of the state of Florida. Again, next year, if this amendment passes, our minimum wage would go from $8.56 to $10 an hour. And over a period of the next 5 years, it would raise to $15 an hour. The state of Florida, and this will appear on the ballot that you vote on. The state of Florida has impacted the cost of a minimum wage increase to state and local governments in our state. Next year, that increase would be $16 million. That is equal to 1/100th of 1% of this year's $91 billion budget. By 2027, they estimated the increase to state and local budgets totaling $540 million. That number sounds like a lot. It is a lot, $540 million, but it is 1/2 of 1% of the $91 billion Florida budget this year. So we can safely assume that it'll be less than that as a percentage of the budget in 2027, because these things always go up and very rarely down. So that's it. This amendment is not difficult to understand. It's very simple. It is the right thing to do. The current minimum wage is simply too low, and this is I think, conservative, gradual way to raise it in such a way that it has a big impact on people's lives without having a big impact on the bottom lines of government and small business. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Ben. You wrapped up pretty quickly. So anything else you want to add before we switch over to John Horne?
No, I think I think I made my points. I'd rather spend time answering folks' questions at the end if they have them.
Great, thank you so much. All right, I'd like to introduce John Horne, who is a veteran of Manatee County's hospitality industry for nearly 40 years. He is a graduate from Clemson University and opened his first restaurant, the Anna Maria Oyster Bar, on the city pier back in 1995. 4 more restaurants have followed, and AMOBs have become a very well-known place here on the Sun Coast. Horne and his 358 coworkers have garnered many accolades over the year, including Small Business of the Year for Manatee, Sarasota, Longboat Key Chambers of Commerce, Spirit of Manatee Volunteer Award, which is a very, very prestigious award. Many additional awards that go with that. Those are kind of the highlights. He's also very active outside of his restaurants and has participated on just a very long list of boards across the region. John and his wife give back to the community in big ways, supporting leading fundraisers for PACE, Center for Girls, Women's Resource Center, Cancer Support Center, and many others. He also started, in conjunction with the Moon family, the Horne and Moon Scholarship social event, which has raised close to $500,000 for scholarships for adults wanting to go back to school. And also back in 2017, John and Amanda piloted something called the Dive Into Reading program, which is working with kids to increase 3rd grade reading levels. It's now being rolled out in Sarasota County. So John is a very busy individual, not only running his business, but also giving back. John, go ahead and take it away.
Thanks so much, Heather. I appreciate that intro. I'll try to live up to part of it anyway. The first question right out of the bat is, how can I stand in front of my staff and say, I don't want to give you more money? And that's what people have asked me during my whole campaign against Amendment 2. And there's not a soul in our industry or any industry that doesn't want to pay people more, that they don't want their staff to make a living wage. So there is not a bone in anyone's body that wants to pay people less. I mean, we've been called slave owners and things like that for what we're paying, but the unintended consequences of 196 word amendment, there's so many that you can't even touch them all. But speaking just from the hospitality industry, and one of the hardest things to understand is tipped wages, because people would ask me about raising minimum wage. I'm like, go ahead. I don't have anyone at minimum wage. I mean, our kitchen staff are anywhere from $12.50 to $18 an hour. So when you say we're going to raise the minimum wage to $10, I'm like, that doesn't affect me at all. But when you realize that all of our tipped employees we get a $3.02 tip credit. So there is a tipped wage. Florida already has we're already paying $5.54 an hour. Georgia and most states are paying $2.13. So we're already doubling the minimum wage for tipped employees. So this is where the problem is going to come in, is the unintended consequence of increasing that tipped wage, because for every dollar it goes up, the minimum wage, the tipped wage goes up. So 66% of my hours are tipped employees. So my servers, and any server, I talk about mine, but just about any server is already making $25, $30, $35 an hour with their wage and tips. What we're afraid is going to happen, let me just give you the example of one of my stores, my Ellington store. So if the minimum wage amendment passes at that one store, just for tipped employees, the first year when it goes to $10 an hour, my payroll will increase $138,000 the first year. So what's going to happen? Where's that $138,000 going to come? In one restaurant. That's not compressing any wages in the kitchen. That's just tipped employees. Where's it going to come? I'm going to raise prices. So the argument again to pass it is that it's not going to change consumer prices. It will definitely change consumer prices. Talked to John Saputo the other day, and he said a case of beer will go from $27 to $34 immediately. So everybody's price is going to increase. And excuse me, all the consumer prices will increase. So it's going to cost people more if they go to the grocery store, if they go anywhere, all prices. I'm going to raise my menu prices. Who's not getting a raise with the minimum wage going up? 22% of Floridians are seniors on fixed incomes. They're not getting this raise. So the premise of the incoming tide raises all boats does not apply here. And here's where I'm mostly concerned. I'm concerned that, yes, I may give my staff a raise in an hourly amount, but I'm going to cut their hours, because I have, you guys are very familiar with our restaurants. I have regular customers that come in 4, 5, 6 times a week. They're on fixed incomes. They know exactly how much they have to spend every month, every week, and they've got that budgeted out. If I increase my prices to cover this $138,000, we're not even moving forward. When the minimum wage hits $15, if we don't defeat this amendment, my payroll just for tipped employees will go up $617,000 at one store. So that money has to come from somewhere. It's definitely not on the bottom line. Restaurants work at about a 5 to 7% margin. So that's not going to help us. So I'm going to raise prices, and yes, it's gradual, and I can slowly increase it. And won't people be able to absorb $1 an hour every year? No, you can't. So what's going to happen? Prices are going to go up. My guest counts will go down. The people that eat with me 5 times a week will stop eating with me 5 times a week. They may go down to 2 times a week or 1 time a week. So if that's the case and my counts go down, I don't need as many servers. I don't need as many people in the kitchen. My hours that I'm going to give to my staff will decrease. And so I can stand in front of my kitchen guy, and I can go to a new guy that's making $12.50 an hour and say, hey, right now you're making $12.50 an hour and you're getting 40 hours a week. You make $500 a week as your take home. Well, not take home. That's what they get paid. They got to pay Uncle Sam a little bit. If his pay goes to $15 an hour and he's all of a sudden cut down to 30 hours a week, he's making $450 an hour. He's happy because he makes $15 an hour, but if he walks home with $450 instead of $500, he didn't get a raise. He lost money. So that is one of my main concerns. Restaurants in New York and Seattle that went to this $15 minimum wage, they cut out tipping completely. So they just paid everybody $19, $20 an hour and then split tips, whatever was left over the service charge that they increased their prices. Danny Meyer's one of the most famous restaurateurs in the United States. He tried this for 4 years and went back on it and said, this does not work. If a server or a bartender is making $30 an hour and suddenly now they're making $20 an hour, they can't work enough hours to make up that difference. So we're going to cut hours, and that's the unintended consequence. The whole system of wages has always been that the free market dictates wages. When the UTC Mall opened out at University, what happened? The demand for labor went up. And so every restaurant, they opened all these new restaurants out in that area. The demand for labor went up. The supply stayed the same, so wages went up. It's economics 101. So we can't use a broad brush. The wages at UTC are different than they are in downtown Bradenton. The wages in the Keys or Miami are different than they are in Gadsden County. We can't say that all of Florida needs to have the same wage. You just can't do it. We're just worried, absolutely worried, that we're going to lose our customers. They're not going to be able to eat out as often as they can. Who else is harmed by this? Youth wages. Currently, I have 4 high school kids almost every shift, lunch and dinner, opening the front door, welcoming you to the Anna Maria Oyster Bar, and seating you at a table. I've got barbacks, I've got bussers. 1 in 3 Americans got their first job in the hospitality industry. I started at $201 an hour as a busboy. I doubt I was worth $201 an hour, but I definitely was not worth $15 an hour. I'm pretty sure I wasn't worth $2. But we're not going to be able to hire that high school kid. And it's an entry-level job. That's where you teach them to show up on time, take a shower before you come to work, be nice to people. You learn how to deal with people that are nice, and you learn how to deal with people that are not nice. Where is that entry level going to be? You can't afford to pay someone $15 an hour as an entry level. Last year, there were over 1 million jobs in the hospitality industry. 12% of employment came from the hospitality industry. So that's one of our main concerns. We're one of the largest employers in the state of Florida. If we keep increasing the wages, we're not going to be business friendly like we always have been. We're already not competitive with Georgia. We're not competitive with South Carolina. We're going to be non-competitive with everyone if we go to this, because the federal minimum wage for tipped employees is $213. We're going to be we're going to be at $10 an hour before you know it. And then the tipped wage will be it's $6.98 for tipped employees as soon as it does. The tipped employees will lose jobs. Younger workers will lose jobs. Seniors that aren't getting a raise will lose their buying power. There's so many unintended consequences. What's going to happen? Who's going to replace those high school kids? Automation. You'll see more and more. Everybody's been to a McDonald's, I'm sure. You order at a kiosk. That's just not hospitality. We just don't want it to change to that. Ben mentioned that the cost of government's going to go up $540 million a year. I know that doesn't sound, or he's saying it's not a lot. That's a lot of money. We can't let government and schools, we haven't even mentioned how much schools are going to increase. And who pays that? The taxpayer does. Absolutely, the taxpayer does. So just for the unintended consequences of the hospitality industry is one reason to vote no on Amendment 2. There's all kinds of other industries that we haven't even scratched. And that's why you can't paint with such a broad stroke. We appreciate all the letters to the editor that have come out and everything. So we're obviously doing everything we can to educate the voter so that you don't walk in not knowing the unintended consequences to the ballot box or get your vote by mail and say, oh, $10 an hour? Yeah, everybody needs more money. That's our whole intent, is to educate as many as we can. No one says that we don't need to increase wages. We just don't want to see it get to $15. Once it's in the Constitution, there is nothing we can do. It's not a law, it's a constitutional amendment. That's not where it should be. So thank you for inviting me today.
Thank you so much, John. We do have questions coming in the chat. And I think how we'll do this is we'll give each of you kind of a chance to respond. There's been a couple questions on, how does this minimum wage impact nonprofits? So Ben, let's turn it back over to you.
I mean, nonprofits are subject to the same minimum wage as any other business, and so this would apply to them as it does with any other business. Again, we did this as simply as possible. The Florida Constitution, sets the minimum wage at $6.50 an hour, and then allows for a cost of living adjustment every September. Our amendment would delete the provision that says $6.50 and replace that with $10 an hour, and to increase by $1 an hour until it reaches $15 in 2026, and then again to revert to that cost of living adjustment. So this is unfortunately the way that we have to do minimum wage in the state of Florida. I think as John said, there's big regional differences in this state, but we have a unified government. And we also have a government that specifically doesn't want individual cities and counties to be able to control their own minimum wage. The city of Miami Beach tried to increase their minimum wage a few years ago, and the state legislature successfully sued them to block them from doing so.
Heather, it's going to drastically affect not-for-profits, and not in their labor, but in donations that are coming in. If small businesses' bottom lines are decreased, that's where a lot of their donations come from, is people in the community that participate, that raise money, that donate money to not-for-profits that are in business and help them. If they're out of business, if they're not in our community, not-for-profits are going to suffer drastically. They're just reeling right now with COVID because businesses are not making money. So they're not able to help the not-for-profits. And Lord knows we have so many in Manatee and Sarasota that need help of small businesses and big businesses. So if bottom lines are cut, where are you going to cut your expenses? One way is in helping others. You're going to start making some tough decisions, and that will be one.
Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and go back to Benjamin. This question was specifically for you, Ben. Is there a plan to help those families that will tip over the benefits cliff during the graduated increase if the increase doesn't replace benefits?
Well, no, but that's a great question, and honestly, that's part of the logic of doing this, is that right now at $8.56 an hour, at 20 grand a year, a lot of people who are working full time making the minimum wage are currently accessing means tested government benefits like food stamps, like Medicaid. One of the reasons that John Morgan decided to put whatever it is, $5 or $6 million of his own money into this campaign to put this on the ballot and to get it passed is because he and his wife are the primary donors to one of the biggest food banks in Orlando. And when they go there, when they see their work in action, they see people coming there every single day in uniforms, coming off of shifts, having to go to a food bank. So people are not getting paid enough right now, and they are currently having to access government benefits even though they're working 40 or 50 hours a week. And the hope with gradually increasing the minimum wage is that that will be less and less the case over time.
Heather, it's called a cliff for a specific reason, and that is another unintended consequence of this. If people start making just a gradual amount more money than they are making now, they could lose their daycare, they could lose their EBT, they could lose, there is not a gradual drop off currently set up with the benefits. So if someone makes an additional $40 a week, they're going to lose a benefit. So they're going to lose $200 worth of benefits or more for a $40 increase in pay. It's called a benefit cliff, and it's harsh for people.
Okay. Let's see. Here's a question for both of you. We'll go back to, or I guess we'll start with you, John, on this one. How would this impact wage compression for workers who make more than minimum wage, but less than the $15 an hour, who have more responsibilities, skills, or qualifications versus the minimum wage workers who are just, going to get more wages due to the amendment passing?
Well, the compression is, if we're currently paying as I said, between $12 and $18 an hour, and the minimum wage increases. So I'm already paying $5 to $8 more than minimum wage. The compression is going to, if I start hiring people at $15 an hour, and I've got a guy that's worked for me for 15, 18 years, and he's at 17, he's not going to want to continue to work for $17 an hour. He's going to want to still be acknowledged as $8 more than the entry-level guy. So the compression is going to raise all wages in that respect. So you can't just say that, well, take your total hours and multiply that times 15, and that's what your payroll will be. Everyone's going to get an increase. So yes, they're going to be happy to be getting more money, but then the disparity between what the new people are getting is going to be drastic as well.
Yeah, so the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office looked at this kind of question exactly in a big report they did on minimum wage increases last year. And they said that this is looking at $15 an hour in 2025. In an average week in 2025, the $15 minimum wage option would boost the wages of 17 million workers who would otherwise earn less than $15 an hour, and another 10 million workers otherwise earning slightly more than $15 an hour might see their wages rise as well. So that, you know, it will certainly raise all of those wages, you know, between $8.56 and you know, just above $15 an hour.
Except for the people that will lose their jobs.
Well, again, the Congressional Budget Office looked at all of this, and they did say nationally it would result in 1.3 million people losing their jobs, but it would also result in 1.3 million people being lifted out of poverty. And again, 27 million people earning more money than they earn today.
Right. But
Right.
it's 158,000 in Florida would lose their jobs. So, I mean, more people would lose their jobs.
What is that based on? What is that based on?
That was in the last study, I believe, by Tax Watch.
Okay. Did you have a response, Ben, or should we go on to the next one?
No, I don't care what Tax Watch says, sorry.
Okay. This is coming in from Dr. Carol Probstfeld. Her comments are, I too am very concerned about the unintended consequences. At State College of Florida, our work-study funds are fixed, so when the wage increases, hours must decrease. Students who are struggling to stay in school will be most impacted when they work fewer hours. Students who are parents will suffer when their childcare costs go up. This will create a serious barrier to entry for our most needy and vulnerable students. Ben, do you want to go first on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how to address that exactly, other than to say that, you know, it is, you know, talking about childcare and you know, people's employment, people should be able to you know, work 40 or 50 hours a week, work a full-time job, and be able to take care of their family. And the bottom line is that at $8.56 an hour, that is simply not possible. And people deserve to be paid a decent, fair wage for you know, a day's work. And this is you know, passing Amendment 2 is a way to do that. In such a way that is gradually put in place over a period of years, but still respects that dignity of work that we all deserve.
One of the ways you're going to make up for that at the college level is it's going to have to be increased through the legislative money that goes to the colleges. So in addition to the 540, and they're estimating 267 million just to schools, which is your state school system and all of your K through 12 in each county. So it's the taxpayer that's going to be on the hoof for all of this. So that's, you know, there's just more money, and that's in the amendment. It says if this passes, it could have an increase in taxes, and it will, because obviously government they have to balance their budget. They're going to increase taxes to pay all of this increased wages and increased price of everything they have to buy.
Okay, we've got another question here. It says, please address the point that entry-level jobs were never intended to provide a living wage, and employees are expected to increase their value to a business which then becomes higher wages. John, you want to go first on that one?
Yeah, I'll be happy to, because when I started as a busboy in college. So I didn't have the skills I had to run 4 restaurants. So you start a job at entry level. It's not to support a family of 4. It's to get your foot in the door that you get a better job. You get a promotion to server. You get a promotion to assistant manager, to assistant GM, to GM, to owner. That's the way to do it. There's a great story of just a welder. And the welder, there was a job outside, or there was a sign outside hiring welders, $15 to $30 an hour. And so he went in and he did 2 welds for his boss. And one was just this garbled mess, and the other was this gorgeous weld. And his boss said, "Tell me what that is." And he says, "Well, that one on the top is what I'll give you for $15 an hour. And that one at the bottom is what you'll get for $30 an hour." So we have the ability to go to MTC, to Sarasota County Technical College, to get a better job, to get better qualification, to get paid more. So you get your foot in the door at minimum wage, and then you learn your trade. You go to classes, you go to school to learn a trade better. You become a better welder, and you doubled your money. So that's the way it's set up, and that's the free market system.
Yeah, I mean, I would just honestly reject the whole premise of that question. I mean, if somebody works, I mean, this is just my personal belief, but if somebody works 40 or 50 hours a week, if somebody's working full time, they should be able to feed themselves and put a roof over their heads, and that's that's the bottom line of what I believe, and why, one of the many reasons I believe folks should vote yes on this amendment.
Okay, let's see. We've got a question. Employers required talent with skills and certifications. Do you believe this will lower the enrollment in schools and less trained talent? Ben, let's start with you.
No, absolutely. I think the opposite should be true. It should, folks who are making more money are going to be, a lot of people work to put themselves through school, and so folks are making more money. Their ability to do so will increase. So I think it should have the effect of overall increasing the education and training of the workforce.
I don't think it's going to change. I agree with Ben, but I do think that it's not going to increase the productivity to pay someone $10 an hour or $15 an hour. You're getting the same person. They're going to go back to get a trade, just for the example I gave you with the welders or whatever it is. If I can start a job at $10 an hour and there's another job within that company at 15, if I increase my skills, whether it's through training or just being a better employee at that job and get another promotion. In the restaurant industry, we start people off as soon as they learn in the back of the house, as soon as they learn another position. So I got a guy, he's a dishwasher, and then he learns to prep, and then he learns to saute, and then he learns to fry. He learns every position in there. He gets a raise every time he learns a position. So he is increasing his skill level. So you're not getting a higher productivity just by giving them, you may get a happier employee, as Ben says, but you're not getting more productivity just by paying him $5 an hour more than he's getting right now. They earn that increase.
We've got, let's see, we've got 1 out of 6 restaurant workers live below the poverty line, according to the Economic Policy Institute. And the employee turnover rate is 75%. Doesn't employee turnover cost businesses money, and how would you propose to change this? We want to start with, let's see, who did we, I think, Ben, you're up.
John owns the restaurant, so I think.
Yeah, I'll take it. I mean, we don't have a high turnover. In our industry, we do. We don't in ours because we take care of people. So I think that's all part of how you run your business. And it's not someone telling me I have to take care of my people. I have to treat them like humans. I do that so I don't have turnover. Yes, it costs a fortune to train a server, a cook, a grill. anyone in our industry, it takes a fortune to call. So, but I don't need the government to tell me what I've got to pay them to keep them. I don't need that. I need to provide a place that they can enjoy their work to cut down my turnover. My turnover is so minimal compared to the industry, but that is entirely up to us and how we do things. I do not believe that 1 in 6, did you say 1 in 6?
Mm-hmm.
Or 6, yeah, are below poverty level by any stretch of the imagination.
Ben, do you want to respond to that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, I think that's a sad state of affairs when 1 out of 6 restaurant workers are below the poverty line, and the turnover is that high. And again, I think this is a moral issue, on some level, that people should be able to work a full-time job and feed themselves and put a roof over their head. And with Florida's minimum wage right now at $8.56, that's simply not possible.
Okay. As of yesterday, the unemployment rate in the state of Florida was 750,000 people. The head economist for the Florida Chamber has projected that this amendment will not only cost jobs in Florida, but will most likely increase the poverty issue due to reduction of hours and benefits. Ben, you want to start us off?
Is there a question?
Uh,
I cited previously the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office. I don't to address something that somebody said from the Florida Chamber third hand. I can't really address that.
Well, I think the question would be, how does this amendment affect unemployment?
Well, people are obviously suffering in this pandemic, whether they've gotten laid off or whether their hours have gotten cut. I think again, that crystallizes the reason why we should pass this thing. John keeps talking about the free market, right? If there's jobs available, people will have to compete for workers and people will get paid more. Well, what happens when the opposite is true? When people are out of work and there's not that many jobs available, it means people will go to work for less. And so at a time when so many people are unemployed, they should have the government, the government requirement of a solid minimum wage to let them know that when they do go back to work, they're going to be able to feed their family and put a roof over their head.
Heather, I think the colleges, Michelle at Kaiser and Dr. P at SCF might be, on the up for this, because the inverse curve with unemployment and college enrollment is there. That if we have all of this unenrollment, with unemployment, we're going to have more people in college, and the costs are going to go up there as well. So that just is not helping us by putting more people out of work. We've got enough people out of work right now, and by raising the wages, we're going to cut hours, shifts, and jobs.
Okay, we probably have time for just 2 more questions. One of the questions is, we should be addressing why people are staying at minimum wage through their career. Can we discuss or explain how we might better tackle that issue and why that wouldn't be a better strategy?
That's certainly an issue worth looking at, but what we're talking about here today is the minimum wage, and raising it from what it is now, which is $8.56 an hour, to $10 this time next year, to $1 an hour each year until in 2026 it reaches $15 an hour. That's simply what this amendment does, and the reason for doing so is simply that the current minimum wage at $8.56 an hour isn't enough. Whether you're working that job for 1 month or 1 year or your entire life, $8.56 an hour is not enough, to feed an individual and put a roof over their head, much less a family.
As I said, I don't have anyone at minimum wage in our restaurant. That's what the free market system does. The demand for labor will increase prices. So the more businesses we have operating, the more demand for labor. So we need to make sure we're doing everything we can to keep small businesses and large businesses in business. This is not helping it. So we need to keep everybody working right now. That's the whole place. 856 is way too low. There's no one that will debate that. We don't pay 856. No one is. No one is. Anyone should never stay at 856. Everybody has the ability to walk into a job and promote themselves to make more money. $15 is way too high. They need to let the legislature decide what it should be if they don't let the free market. And that's what the legislature has done. The free market has dictated wages. Publix starts cashiers in the Keys at $15 an hour. Publix in Sarasota does not. That's what the market does.
So, I mean, this, I think John's answer to this last question should make, it certainly makes me, should make, I think, make anybody listening here really question the hysterics surrounding, the impacts of a minimum wage increase. He's absolutely right. There are very few employers that are paying the minimum wage. He doesn't pay the minimum wage. Publix is not paying the minimum wage. I went on Indeed.com earlier today. The starting wages at a Walmart in Florida are between $10.50 and $12 an hour. The lowest paid retail sales jobs started at, average about $11 an hour. So the bottom line is there's not a lot of people paying $8.56 right now. And the way that this amendment is structured to raise it to $10 next year and gradually increase it by $1 a year over a period of 6 years, should really not have a tremendous impact on folks, on businesses' bottom lines, because as John said, they're not paying people the minimum wage right now.
But how I started it off, Ben, was all tipped employees are considered minimum wage. So with the tip credit, it's going to constantly raise that. So $122,000, $138,000 at one store is a drastic increase in wages. $617,000 at one restaurant is drastic wages. So the unintended consequences of not carving out the tip wage, like the federal wage does, is one of the reasons, the biggest reason for the hospitality industry to be up against this.
That is an issue that, as I said, is not addressed in the amendment, and so as a result, can and should be addressed by the legislature. I mean, as long as we can have a philosophical debate about the whole system of tipping at restaurants, right? And how ultimately a lot of the wage costs are passed on to consumers because in America we tip instead of paying waiters and waitresses more. But again, that lies, the tip credit situation that you're talking about lies entirely in the hands of the state legislature.
It was a constitutional amendment, just like Amendment 2 is trying, that put it in the Constitution. It cannot be changed. So that is why the restaurant industry is against it.
Got it.
And let's go to our last question. Is it true that Florida would be the only state mandating a $15 an hour wage embedded in the state's constitution? So I believe the question is, would we be the only state to have this mandated statewide in our constitution?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's, yes, but, by other states will have, and certainly by 2026 will have passed it. Florida, just because of how we do things electorally here, the only way for citizens to change laws in the state that the legislature refuses to act on is through constitutional initiatives. So not every state has constitutional initiatives. Some states have statutory initiatives, some states have both, some states have neither. People can't do direct democracy in some states. So the answer to the question is yes, but it's a little bit more complicated than that.
One of the states, I believe it was the state of New York, the legislature passed $15 an hour, and all of the workers, including the hospitality, marched on Albany, and they got it repealed because they saw that the effects of raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour in the state of New York were devastating. So the legislature repealed their law, increasing it to $15 an hour. We can't repeal a constitutional amendment that easily.
Okay, well, this has been some great dialogue, some really good conversation. I'm hoping that everyone who joined us today for this State of Community on Amendment 2, that you each took some wisdom from you. I want to personally thank Ben Pollara. Thank you so much for being with us today, as well as you, John Horne. Thank you for your knowledge. I'm going to turn it over to Dom DeMaio, who is going to close us out.
Thank you, Heather. I usually do a full closing with what's coming up, but instead, what I want to do is thank the Sarasota Chamber for their partnership today and in years past. We truly enjoy getting our groups together, and I think it's good for the community. And Sarasota Chamber is continuing to drive growth inside our community. So thank you, Heather. What I'll do is ask you all to go to sarasotachamber.com/events or the Lakewood Ranch Business Alliance.org and click on events. You can see what we have upcoming in the fall. I think what you'll see, and I looked at both of them today, is it's a jam-packed fall as we try to get you back together both in person and continue to do virtual events as well. So thank you for attending today. Thank you, Heather, and thank you to you all, to everyone, and enjoy the rest of your week. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.